Fam, what happened last night? Let's talk about your girl.
Okay, so just an update. First of all, let's start with Georgia. Georgia had disastrous elections. Poll machines not working, long lines, the same bullshit that we heard throughout this primary season and all the way, of course, back in 2016. So we let's just take a look at some of the issues that were happening in Georgia. Yeah.
This is primary day in Georgia. Lines in Atlanta stretching for blocks. Some standing in the rain, forced to wait hours to cast a ballot.
You've been here about 3 hours. I'm not leaving. You're not leaving? I'm done. Why are you so intent upon staying here? It's important. It's important for me. It's important for my son.
So we're going on that 4-hour mark.
Georgia unveiling new voting machines statewide right in the midst of a pandemic.
Several of the machines were broken. It seemed like maybe half of the machines were down.
It was a disappointment. This is something that should have been checked yesterday.
The biggest problems in metro Atlanta, specifically areas with higher black populations. The city's mayor asking, is this happening across the county or just on the south end, pointing to a predominantly black area. LeBron James tweeting, they say go out and vote. What about asking if how we vote is also structurally racist? Georgia's Secretary of State, who oversees the election, is blaming local officials, saying poll workers were not properly trained.
The employees didn't understand the system. So what were they doing for all these months? All of a sudden they wake up and they say, let's have an election on Tuesday?
One county official firing back at the Secretary of State, saying if there was a failure of leadership, it starts where the buck should stop, at the top. Now Georgia's Secretary of State has launched an investigation ahead of November's election.
Taking over Boulevard.
Okay, so as you guys heard, the same old issues that have plagued us for the longest time.
This.
I mean, it's just the same bullshit. And then we just have another Twitter clip that shows a little bit more of that.
Guys, I'm terrified. I ran for office. I worked for President Obama in the White House. This is wrong. This is America. Please, God, help us. I mean it. This is a crisis in our world to make us not exercise our right to vote.
And let me ask you something. Did anybody call the news or anything?
I tweeted all the major networks. So everybody tweet the networks. Everybody, please. The radio stations, everybody. Tweet everybody, please everybody. We cannot tolerate this. I love you. I love you. I love civil disobedience. Let's work together. I love you. I'm just sick. I have to go home to take medicine. But I love you.
Thank you.
Keep the eyes. I'm terrified.
Right. So people are obviously outraged because this keeps happening, right? And I think the Democratic Party thinks that people aren't paying attention because it's COVID, because it's protests. But now people are paying attention because they're protesting, and a lot of people are starting to talk about, well, you know, a lot of young people, especially, our vote doesn't count. People, I mean, we wait in hours. People were waiting for hours, and the Democrats come back with a retort. Oh, okay, well, I hope we can fix it by November.
Yeah.
Because that's all they care about. Because they don't care about this primary. Why? Because they've already selected Joe Biden as the candidate. They've already decided they decided that a long time ago, that it wasn't going to be Bernie Sanders. You're dismissing everybody's right to vote right now. Even if Joe Biden has clinched the nomination, people have the right to vote for whoever they want. And the fact is, a lot of people don't like Joe Biden, and they want to make sure people hear that.
Okay. And also this spin to just make it like it's about race only. It's a political divide too as well, because yes, you know, and I think the Democrats are trying to spin this as look what they're doing in Georgia. They're suppressing the black vote, whatnot. Yeah, but we saw in LA they suppressed the Latino vote and the young hipster vote. They made those lines long, knowing that all these young kids were going to go out with this populist message of progressivism and going to go vote. So they want to suppress the vote, you know, all across the board.
Yeah.
The black vote in Georgia is primarily Democratic. You know what I'm saying? It's more progressive. But it's also political, we see as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's the Democrats are going to try to twist this and say, look what the Republicans are doing to you. Vote for us. We're going to fix it. And they're never going to fix it. No. So they're the wolves in sheep clothing
Here's where that argument dies, though. This is the primary. So obviously the fight isn't Democrat versus Republican. This is a primary. This is people like voting for the Democratic candidate or the Republican candidate. So there's your argument there. Your argument dies because the primaries are about choosing the right candidate to run in the general. So they can't even use that argument because that's not where the battle is. That's in the general November. And so they always, even here, they're like, well, I hope we can fix it by November. No, bullshit. Like, you were supposed to have it fixed a long fucking time ago. And I want people to be more like this lady, to be outraged, to be pissed off, because at the very least that'll draw attention to what's happening, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, hey, why is this happening right now during a primary? Like, is it going to be magically fixed in time to vote against Donald Trump? Mm-hmm. I mean, come on. So
that was fire what she did.
Yeah.
I mean,
we need to see more
it looks like she went to the outside the line with her car, and she just started publicly speaking. This is what we need to do more of.
Yep.
More and more people need to go out and have public town halls.
Yeah. She did say she worked for Obama. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what she.
Yeah,
was,
but
what
I think she
was
meant
meaning by
like
that.
I worked for Obama. I campaigned for Obama. Blah blah blah. I think she was just saying like I've been here before. This is not normal.
Okay.
I don't think she was saying like praise Obama. Just because she mentioned Obama's name doesn't mean she's praising him.
Gotcha.
So Paula Jean won in West Virginia. She's a progressive. She supports Medicare for All, Green New Deal. She was also in the AOC documentary
with Amy
Vilela. And you know, she's kind of got some controversial issues. That she had a channel where she was talking about pedogate. And that's very real, by the way, for people who want to mock that. That's really real. There's a lot more to that. But she's very heavily focused on the issues when it comes to Medicare for All and things like that. Now, West Virginia, we all know that for me, it's it's definitely one of the most poorest states factually. But for me, it shows just a lot of people that have been forgotten. The coal miners, the factory workers. You go through West Virginia and it's just like solemn. We've seen many movies be made out of the fact that they get diseases from their water. The politicians don't give a crap about them. They are honestly like, it's like a third world country in West Virginia. It's really, really bad. And nobody gives a damn because it's a bunch of, they reference them. It was just a bunch of, quote, hillbillies there. And it's been completely unfair. And the more I've seen about West Virginia, the more I've been angry as to how they've been treated and dismissed. Similarly to Flint, Michigan and other cities like that in America that shouldn't exist. Now, Paula Jean won and beat out Richard Ojeda, who was the other Democrat. And she's running against a Republican female a Republican woman in the general. She has a really good chance to win here. It's ironic to me that in times of crisis, West Virginia might be the one to actually have a progressive. I mean, it's just ironic to me. But you have your opinion on Richard Ojeda. You feel like he's better on foreign policy. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, this is kind of like that whole, divide that I see, fam, that I still think we need to work on. When I saw Paula Jean on, what's his name, the Humanist Report, Michael Figueredo show, that's kind of had that same kind of language of like, okay, these are the things that are uber important to you. Richard Ojeda has been a little flip-floppy when it comes to his rhetoric or, his discussions about Medicare for All, where Paula Jean is going to fight no matter for what for Medicare for All because it's the most important issues. And, Green New Deal, Richard Ojeda has kind of reached an arm out to some of the people who are the coal miners. He doesn't know necessarily if they're going to transition into clean jobs yet. So he still, maybe has this kind of rhetoric where he would continue to have coal miners with their jobs. So therefore he's ostracized from that kind of community. The fact that he's talked to Joe Manchin when it comes to civil liberties issues and trying to push him to get away from the Patriot Act. And I say this right now, when it comes to foreign policy, Richard Ojeda is far superior than Paula Jean Swearengin. Now, what I'm trying to say, fam, is that it's not wrong to pick Paula Jean over, it's not necessarily, you could pick Paula Jean over Richard Ojeda, but I see the same type of language going on when people go, well, why are you supporting for Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders? Bernie was here first, and we should be supporting him. It's like, but you're misunderstanding the issues that these group of people have that you're not allowing to come in sometimes, where I think we need to be building bridges rather than just ostracizing the person and saying whose turn it is. And that is that foreign policy aspect, that civil liberties aspect, whatnot, that it's just the issues that why those people, I think, stood behind Tulsi Gabbard as opposed to Bernie Sanders. And understanding those issues, because I've been at a Bernie group where I've been ostracized for supporting Tulsi Gabbard because they've looked at some of the things that Tulsi Gabbard's done. And I'm saying, you're not listening to me. It's my issues that you're not bringing to the table, that you're not accepting.
But do you really think people are supporting Richard Ojeda for foreign policy? Because I don't buy that. I think Richard Ojeda comes off as a more centrist type of Democrat. And,
we say more centrist, but we're not. He's far superior on foreign policy than Paula Jean Swearengin, by far. He understands imperialism. He understands regime change war. So when we say he's more of a centrist, just because he has that, I mean, I wouldn't consider Tulsi Gabbard to be more of a centrist, but yet she was considered to be more close to the Republicans.
I would consider her not to be as far left, though, as, say, Bernie Sanders on some issues. On foreign policy, though, she was stronger
and civil
in some
liberties.
ways. Yeah, she was more entirely vocal, absolutely, 100%. But here's the thing. When I'm looking at West Virginia, I'm looking at a state that is so poor that I just don't buy that people there are looking at foreign policy as their main concern. People there don't even, I mean, Pasta, it is literally a fourth world country in West Virginia. It is absolutely abysmal. They don't have anything. Nobody gives a damn about their lives. And they've been treated as such. So if I'm a West Virginian, I'm not really going to care about foreign policy because I can't even put food on the table.
There's a lot of
feed
bases there.
family.
There's a lot of but there's a lot of bases. There's a lot of servicemen there in West Virginia too, as well. Richard Ojeda being one of them. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people, whether we believe it or not. Now I understand it's not as important as some of the other issues. And all I'm saying is what I would have liked to have seen from Paula Jean Swearengin, no matter what. And I understand there's bad blood between her and Ojeda because why he ran and whatnot. But I think there should be a recognition from people like a Paula Jean Swearengin, or for people who are more of that Bernie Sanders, Medicare for all, gung-ho, beret people, to say, okay, what are the issues that are important to you? What do we have to bring into the table to bring us together? Because just because we have this small, different, nuanced, mentality about our civil liberties and foreign policy and those things, those need to be brought to the table. Because once again, I think without those issues in place, we can't get to a Green New Deal. We can't get to Medicare for all. And I don't see that sometimes. I still see a lot of Bernie people who are still like anti-Tulsi, to the anti-Tulsi people would saying, okay, well, why do these people feel this certain way? It was the issues. It wasn't Tulsi.
But you can get those things like Medicare for all and Green New Deal without paying attention to foreign policy. We saw it with FDR. The problem is we don't
without
want to make
civil liberties in check.
We don't want to make the same mistake again.
Without our civil liberties in check, you think we can get there?
We
then
have
why
before.
We haven't with Medicare for all.
Well,
we've never
not
with
with
Medicare for all. You know why? Because we have a large population of people in the United States who feel that, a government takeover of Medicare will be evil. And why? Because they've been able to control the narrative. They've been able to control the conversation. They've been able to suppress those voices. For me, information is the most important, valuable commodity out there right now. And he who controls it controls the people. So therefore, I don't believe it ever can get done unless we get those civil liberties straight, unless we have true freedom of speech. And we didn't have that issue back then with FDR. Now we have a different beast. We have a different game. And if we don't get that straight, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. I agree. I'm just saying it's not as present in the mind of people in West Virginia who are living in dire poverty that is hard to imagine exists in the United States. So, I mean, I think if you're going to talk about foreign policy, you have to make it relatable to those people there in that way. And Richard Ojeda has been too comfortable with the establishment. And West Virginia, for instance, in 2016, went for Bernie during the primary, and the general went straight Republican. And you have to think as to why. Because the Republicans weren't the ones that destroyed that state. They weren't the ones that didn't care about the factories being shut down. That left them in poverty. They have a huge opioid crisis, a huge drug problem. Like the Democrats were supposed to go after them, and they never did. So yeah. I think Paula Jean is actually grabbing from a lot of Republicans. I just think that the forefront of her is more domestic policy than foreign policy. And for a state like Virginia, I honestly see it very difficult to really make foreign policy to campaign on that.
It's not you, but also the decriminalization of drugs. Richard Ojeda has been big on that too as well. He's got that libertarian mindset of sorts. And here's the thing. I think neither one of them are tight and too pushy or close to the establishment whatsoever. That's where I see the opportunity for them to come together, because I don't see any of them. Now, I do see Richard trying to get chummy with Manchin, excuse me.
Yeah.
And is a little bit too much blue no matter who.
Yeah.
Because he believes that the Republicans are awful, and he believes that, they're just straight neocons, and he hates Donald Trump. But I thought there may be an opportunity for these people to kind of join
But that's
forces.
why, though.
Yeah.
If he's so focused on hating Donald Trump, that's going to off-put a lot of Republicans that are like, well, yeah, Trump, but look what the Democrats have done. So I think that's why she won.
So Jameson Doan is putting me in my place. He says Pasta is 100% wrong. Ojeda in foreign policy. He voted for Manchin. He doesn't mean what he says. Paula is 100% anti-imperialism and doesn't flip-flop on everything like Ojeda. You can't trust him. So Jameson is obviously for Paula Jean Swearengin.
What specifically foreign policy-wise?
Just his rhetoric about how we get involved with wars and what we do to our veterans as they come home. And once again, this is a long time ago, and there's a lot of people who are saying that he has flip-flopped on a lot of things. Remember Ojeda? I paid attention to Ojeda a lot when he jumped into the presidential race and stuff like that. And he was always looking at the oligarchs and saying we should eat the rich, and that they were going out to fight their wars, and these wars are not.
But what is he doing legislatively? That
he wasn't in office to, he was in the state Senate for a long time ago, whatnot, and so a lot of people like Paula Jean on this, and like I said, I'm willing to look more and see more, but I would like to see a bridge of those people come over and stand behind Paula Jean for her to win and sew this up. And I see a lot of the cancel culture sometimes. And I've seen that with Paula Jean sometimes, but in the past, like she really went after Ojeda because Ojeda said he believed in due process when it came to Kavanaugh. And I thought Paula Jean was very hard on Ojeda for that subject, whatnot. Not to say that Ojeda should have had a better position, but, it wasn't like he was pushing forth Kavanaugh.
Well, yeah,
he was just saying, I believe in due process.
Yeah, but that's also a reflective response of people who don't want to, who didn't buy her story. So that's also coming from a place of, that's a reactionary response that a lot of people on the right were saying, using. So for it was probably,
Well, as we see, their goose is cooked of their attitudes towards Biden right now. So, I mean, a lot of people called it for what it was politics. And it was.
I mean, I think it's still, a lot of people may have their differences with Paula, but I think it's still a victory in the sense of if somebody like her gets in there, she is one of those people like Bernie that is bringing, I think, in some of the Republicans that have suffered under the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is largely hated in West Virginia for a reason, but the progressives are able to make a door there. They're able to go in there. So I think we're going to be it's going to be an interesting race. I think she can win it if I agree if she gets the support rallied behind her. We'll have to wait to see how that happens.
Yeah. And somebody said the Cenk promotion of Ojeda is all that you need to know.
Yeah.
Tony watches closely and stuff. And let me tell you something. I'm pretty sure that there's we've been involved in California politics before. We understand the whole ins and outs. There's a lot of shit going on. It's like a weekly TV show of drama, and this person said this and that. So I'm sure there's a lot more to it. I didn't put under a microscope the race between Swearengin and Ojeda, so I'm sure there's a lot of things I can get educated on. However, I'm just kind of, talking about my position right now, like I talked about, because we had some arguments the other day with some activists out here, and they still don't understand imperialism. They don't understand, our foreign policy. I think Johnny was even almost compelled to want to say something on a megaphone about foreign policy and how important it is. And their civil liberties. They have no idea how damaging the Patriot Act is and what it is. They don't even understand what Snowden did. And that is dangerous because we have to understand that as well. It is a nuanced situation. But I'm just feeling that door is still not opened up by some
it has to
people
come from a place
in.
of understanding where they're coming from too. I always go back to that, because if you're just going to go and educate people on something like more than they do, it's not going to be receptive. I just feel like we're big picture thinkers. You are especially. We think on an international level and a national level. We just interviewed a guy that's more of a community organizer, thinking on the micro level. So there is that. Just because people don't think on that macro level doesn't mean that you can't talk to them about it or get them to make those connections. Human nature is to look immediately at what your first needs are: hunger, shelter. It's but that's why it's so hard to get people to pay attention to Assange, to get people to pay attention to regime change wars, because they're like, wait a minute, that's all over here. I'm over here. I need to pay my rent. I need to get this. So there has to be a way to bridge that. And you want to bridge the libertarians with that, but the libertarians then have to care about they can't dismiss it as they're communist. Oh, they're socialist.
No, I hear you. And we have to move those particular type of modern day libertarians even further when it comes to that. I like to tell them how money's make pretend. But, like the Green New Deal. We talk about a Green New Deal. Well, one of the dirtiest ways that we pollute this planet and its ozone layer is through war, is missiles blowing up, whatnot. So that's why I thought eventually we would get to there and say, hey, man, you care about a Green New Deal? Let's stop dropping bombs. Let's stop dropping bombs and stuff like that, because that's what's really killing the ozone layer. And let's talk about how these bombs get there. Let's talk about the ways they do get here. So I hear you, fam. And once again, when it comes to Paula Jean Swearingen and Richard Ojeda, I'm sure there's a lot more nuanced situations that happen. It's just that I still feel the fact that a lot of people don't understand why I supported Tulsi Gabbard over Bernie Sanders and stuff. It wasn't the person, it was the issues, and to find the way how we get there. And I'm still searching for that way, how we get in there, because like you said, people are going to be concerned about rent and food and stuff. So they can't see past that because that's survival mode. And most of the people on this planet right now are in survival mode.
Right.
So.
Especially in this country, too.